But if 3 is any indicator, a remake of 4 is inevitable in the coming years.
Guess that's a local's way of breaking the ice.
What up everyone, I'm HAVOC and I'm back with another game review. For those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I did a review on both the remake of 3 and Resident Evil Village, which I have digitally. Both of which I really enjoy given 3's problems, like its criminally short length. But let me take you all back to 2005, where a very certain game came out and took the world by storm. Resident Evil 4, probably one of, if not the most beloved game in the series, came out and was a resounding success. And I got it back on the GameCube no less, when it was still exclusive. So we got the only 4 tag, right there. I played the ever-loving shit out of this growing up, and even revisited it from time to time on the PS4 and on the Switch. It is my favorite Resident Evil game, and probably my 4th favorite game of all time. Funny how RE4 is 4th on that list. Also funny how all 4 of my favorite games are considered 4th installments. Ocarina of Time is the 4th console Zelda game. Metal Gear Solid 4 is the 4th game in the Solid series. Halo Reach is the 4th mainline Halo game, and RE4 is the 4th mainline Resident Evil game. At this point, I may as well call them the 4 horsemen of video games. Moving on. So with all this gushing of the original Resident Evil 4, how does the remake fare? Well, funny you should ask. This game, by all accounts, is a goddamn masterpiece.
Okay, it's game time.
I'll be honest, this remake had a lot riding on it, and I was actually of the mind that the original did not need a remake by any means, until I realized that it has been nearly 20 fucking years.
Nope.
Very helpful.
That's right, Resident Evil 4 came out 18 years ago. So yeah, it was high time for a remake in a market saturated by remakes. However, unlike most remakes out there, this one stands tall above the rest, taking notes from its older remake predecessor, Resident Evil 2. If you played the remake of RE2, you're in for a treat with RE4. Hell, even if you haven't played the original RE4, you're in for a treat. Hell, even if you haven't played either, guess what? You are in for a treat. This game returns to the over-shoulder camera as opposed to 7 in Village's first-person view. Which, by the way, playing Village in third person is a refreshing change. Anyway, the combat was also heavily revamped from the original and RE2, but not to the degree that takes away from the original's feel. Your weapon sandbox is almost exactly like the original, with some small changes here and there. I was super excited to see the Punisher again, which was my favorite pistol to use in the original, where you can pierce through 5 enemies. And as you go on, more and more weapons become available from our dear old Cockney-accented friend, the Merchant, who kept all of his lines from the original and even added a few new ones.
Got a selection of good things on sale, stranger. Got some rare things on sale, stranger. Your valuables won't do you much good in the grave. Thank you.
And the melee combat. My
Roadhouse.
god, the melee combat. Just like the original, you can hit stunned enemies with devastating roundhouse kicks, straight kicks, and even embrace your inner Brock Lesnar with suplexes that may or may not make enemies' heads explode. And your knife. Your knife is a goddamn lifesaver, like it was in RE2. But this time around, you're not limited to just stabbing enemies to get out of them grabbing you, or stabbing boxes to break them. You can now parry attacks from enemies, whether physical, projectile, or even a goddamn chainsaw. God, Leon is such a badass.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Right. I'm probably due for confession anyway.
Another one! You guys are really starting to become a giant pain in my ass.
Now, we can't talk about Resident Evil 4 without bringing up the fact that it is, arguably, the longest escort mission in all of gaming. Though thankfully, this time around, escorting Ashley is nowhere near as annoying as the original.
Leon! Shut up, bitch!
With the obvious changing of actresses.
Senorita has a name and it's Ashley.
The escort segments are much more tolerable, and even seem to be the minority of the game. Plus, with Ashley's AI now more intelligent, instead of just ordering her to wait or follow, you now tell her to follow close or follow loosely, depending on the situation. She does, however, get targeted by enemies quite a bit, often resulting in her getting either caught or incapacitated, which while not nearly as annoying as the original, it can still be irritating, especially right after you help her back to her feet. Which brings us back to the enemies, who also had a major update in not just appearance, but AI, becoming more intelligent and know how to swarm you to give them an edge. Even when it's one-on-one or smaller groups, they seem to know how to corner you, especially during a very familiar, very horrifying returning encounter. I don't scare easy, but even I felt mass anxiety when being chased by the horrifying, lumbering, most terrifying creatures in Resident Evil, and dare I say all of gaming, god damn regenerators. And the way they introduced them this time around.
That is the scariest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
And the boss fights. My god, the boss fights. While some are very familiar, some also have a refreshing change, especially when you look at Salazar, or Ramon as they refer to him in this game, who instead of being stuck to a wall, he flings around the room as this weird, sticky, goo, spider, monster thing. And probably the biggest facelift they added to the game was Krauser.
The most important thing in this world is pure, unadulterated power.
But not just in boss fight, but in story as well. The knife fight you have with him halfway through the game adds a whole lot more of a personal touch to both him and Leon, especially considering what happens during that part of the game. But for story reasons, I will avoid that. Speaking of familiar things that have been given a facelift, the locations are also extremely similar to the original. There were so many times I was having flashbacks like, oh hey, it's the sewers we passed through to get to the village chief's house, or that's the fish farm. But many of them are tweaked and changed around enough to feel unique and fresh to the remake, to feel like a new experience. For example, the village and lake segments were not only switched around a bit, but meshed and expanded upon. And it doesn't stop there. Each segment of the game borders on an open world setting, mainly in the form of going back and collecting treasures you might have missed or have to revisit with an item to make previously inaccessible areas accessible. So more like a Metroidvania, this could get annoying as I found myself constantly backtracking to make sure I got all those little treasures and all the merchant's requests done. But that being said, it gives you plenty of content to delve into. Hell, if you're wanting to take a break from the constant enemies, stop by the shooting range to earn some charms to offer buffs, like increasing your craftable ammo or increasing certain weapons' damage. But I digress. Now visually, the game looks absolutely gorgeous, which of course it does, this is the RE engine we're talking about here. But its presentation, when compared to the original, is nothing to scoff at. Where its predecessor had a semi-brightly colored yet eerie palette, the remake opts instead for the darker, spooky atmosphere more akin to RE2, 3, and Village, and 7. And goddamn, it works so well, especially during certain parts of the game that allows it to just add on to the tension. For now, let's talk about the story and characters. Don't worry, I'm not going to go too spoiler heavy here, but if you haven't at least played the original,
Do it.
Resident Evil 4, both the original and the remake, tell the story of a now battle-hardened Leon S. Kennedy wrestling with the guilt of Raccoon City, as well as his time in the Special Forces, being assigned to rescue the president's daughter, Ashley Graham, from a religious cult somewhere in Spanish Europe. Said religious cult, Los Iluminados, are in possession of Las Plagas, a parasite that completely takes over a person's body, set loose on the surrounding area, turning it into a hostile environment for outsiders. Upon Leon reaching the village, he is greeted in kind by people preaching Shrek's view on villagers.
Grab your torch and pitchforks!
Along the way, he meets Luis Serra,
Encantado.
who, like Krauser, was given a huge rework in terms of story. He's no longer just the odd comic relief character. He's got a lot more depth and has a lot more screen time this time around as he helps you accomplish your objective. I'll be honest, I prefer this Luis to the original, though the charm of the original is not lost to me.
Okay, I have only one very important question. You got a smoke?
Got gum.
Moving on, this wouldn't be a Leon-centric Resident Evil game without our favorite femme fatale, Ada Wong.
Predictable.
Who was also given some more time to shine, but is nowhere near as, shall we say, Bond girlish. I do really like how Ada is handled here, being more serious and straight to the point, but not losing her signature charm, instead just subduing it a bit. Upon reaching Ashley, fans of the original, myself included, would notice she's no longer as whiny and annoying as the original. She's a bit more headstrong and her relationship with Leon flourishes throughout the story in a good, steady way. Plus, she doesn't scream in your ear nearly as much. The villains are also very faithful to the original, while still adding enough to change them in a way that suits the new narrative. Besides Krauser, I think the only one who's really different was Salazar.
Such a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance, Mr. Kennedy.
Who was a bit more chilling and sinister this time around compared to his original, more cartoony villain take.
How dare you! No more games! Kill him!
Sadler is also slightly different, with his goals more in line with totalitarian control rather than just terrorism for the sake of money, like he was in the original.
What do you want?
I simply wish to share this gift with as many as possible. A humble wish, don't you think? You see, we are all connected through the holy body. And now your flesh and bones, your very thoughts, are already one with us.
Bullshit.
But before that, I thought I might bargain with the president for some donation. Believe it or not, it takes quite a lot of money to keep this church up and running.
But before I compare this game to the original anymore, what did I think of the Resident Evil 4 remake? I loved it. It brought just the right blend of familiarity and new content to make the experience that much better. Sure, there may have been a lot of backtracking in my first couple playthroughs, and sure, Ashley being a hindrance sometimes was slightly annoying, not near as annoying as the original. However, that doesn't change how I feel about the game, and that is why I am giving Resident Evil 4, the remake, a gallant rating of 9 out of 10.
Not a bad move. Very smooth.
It hit all the right notes, not only accentuating my nostalgia for it, but also being able to set it as its own thing entirely. And with the Mercenaries free DLC out now, and possibly more on the way, maybe separate ways, this will keep me coming back for a long time yet. Maybe another 18 years like its predecessor? We will have to see. That being said, with this game's success, is a remake of 5 on the way. Part of me kind of hopes so, because I did actually like 5 and I would like to see it reimagined, but the other part of me also dreads it. But we will have to see. Anyway folks, I am Gallant Havoc. Wreak some havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hasta luego.